drop this out. Like,
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year too, and Happy New Year to all y'all guys too. Like all y'all hanging out, and watching with us. We appreciate you. It's good for you to
Yeah.
be here.
Start off the year by telling you click, like, subscribe, share, mirror music. I'm actually I've been blessed and fortunate. I think you know as well as anybody how often how hard I work.
Hmm. Oh
It's
yeah.
been a blessing to have 2 days off back to back weeks, which is something that I'm not even accustomed to. I actually felt the benefits of it. Like today, I was like, oh,
It feels good. It's healthy.
it is. I mean, and that's not to say that I don't have time, but you know what my gaps are like. It's like I'm always podcasting or working.
Hmm.
My daughter somewhere in there until she gets her own car. You know, the chauffeur thing is really what hurt me last year.
Yeah, for sure. So today we're going to get into Biggie's "One More Chance" and Led Zeppelin's "Whole Lotta Love," which are two huge, iconic, and if I may say so, pretty dirty records. Um, I'll start this by saying that when I first found One More Chance and like put it in my playlist to listen to over and over, this has been months ago now. I was listening to it and I was like, I sort of recognize this, but this is not what I recognize really. And I was looking up the lyrics today to write some notes about them before we came on air, and I realized then that there were two different versions. And then I listened to the remix version, which is the one I think we're talking about. Yeah.
Correct.
With Faith Evans in it. And I was like, oh, okay. This is the one that I recognize from like the mid '90s or whatever. So that was a thing that I learned today, in fact.
That's fascinating. That is actually one of the things that I was going to juxtapose as like a little behind the scenes narrative,
Yeah, please do.
the making of this record. So, okay. Um, the original One More Chances, I'm sure now that you've heard, that you've listened, is way more rough around the edges.
Hmm. Here's one that probably would not have made it on the radio in the mid '90s.
Definitely raunchier and grungier.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
just quite frankly, is more reflective of it's almost like the One More Chances are more like the before and after effect of Puff being around Big.
Okay.
That
Mm.
it's like the original One More Chance. Oh,
Mm.
you can tell that the guy that we now call Diddy, that we're calling Puff and Puff Daddy back then, like that guy hasn't influenced the whole of Big yet.
Hmm.
The original One More Chance that you're getting is the Big, like from Brooklyn,
Hmm.
from off the block, talking his Brooklyn shit.
Hmm. That's some serious shit he's talking in that song too.
Yes. The guy that's on One More Chance, the remix. Oh no. That guy's a superstar now.
Hmm. Yeah,
That
absolutely. You can hear the difference.
that guy has made Juicy,
Hmm.
Big Papa now, and play his anthem and get money and blistered countless remixes for Puff. Total Can't You See, 112 only. Like no.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I'm not 112 only, but he's somebody different
Hmm.
on the Chance remix. But the guy that's on the remix is, in conversation as the greatest MC ever, and we're going to unpack why. Because One More Chance is not only one of the best rap records ever, it's very indicative to like why nobody could kind of fuck with Big when he was
Right.
here, like doing some of the things that he was doing,
Okay.
like conceptually and lyrically. Tupac and Nas surpassed Big,
Hmm.
but the overall package, the full game. It's kind of like it's like one of those things. It's like, well, I think LeBron James does more things well than Michael Jordan did, but that doesn't make him a better player.
Right.
And so that's kind of how I feel about Big in relationship to why I don't call him the greatest MC of all time.
Hmm.
It's not that he doesn't deserve to be in the conversation. He most definitely does.
Hmm.
But really, his real skill is that he's great at a little bit of everything, kind of like
Okay.
LeBron. Like I
I
would
got you.
never like LeBron's not the best at anything except for
Right.
maybe driving to the basket. But even then, I would tell you Mike and James Harden and even a young Grant Hill were probably better drivers to the
Hmm.
basket. Not the best at one thing.
I mean, you could argue that young Zion Williamson is too. Like he's on that. I mean, he
Yes,
hasn't done it for long enough, but like nobody can do anything with him at all.
young Charles Barkley,
Yeah.
right? Completely like unstoppable, like going to the hole. So LeBron's not the best at any one thing per se,
Hmm.
but it's the totality of those things that make you think.
He's
It's
near the
like
top of all of them. Yeah.
he's near the top of all of them, and that's big on this record. And it's hard to do that on
The thing that he's been the best at, not as a sidebar, but is staying healthy, really. I mean, and being able to do all of it for longer. Like that's
right.
that's the
So,
superpower.
so big superpower is that he makes the demeaning and the self-effacing funny.
Hmm. These
He
that's
makes,
the first note I wrote on there. The rhymes in this are just hilarious. They're funny.
he could have been a comedian. He's
Yeah.
hilarious. And so what you have to understand is that he's lyrically precise,
Hmm.
but witty.
Yeah.
He's funny. He's
Hmm.
lyrical. He's joking. There's sarcasm. There's
Yeah.
so many literary devices. It's one of rap's biggest single. It has so many brilliant literary things
It's
about it.
so funny. It's so funny.
In
I was
terms
laughing
of
listening to it again. Yeah.
expressing his writing style,
Hmm.
but then you have his actual flow and delivery on there, which I mean, quite frankly, it's like
Mm.
his delivery on this record is like Barry Sanders doing spin moves.
Wow. Yeah. That's the best of the best of the best of the best.
It's it's
Barry
literally.
Sanders is a good comp too because he didn't do it for nearly as long as we wish he would have.
Oh yeah, and if he would have, much like Biggie, probably would have went down as the best ever. And even for my money, I still think he's the best running back ever. Even
Yeah. Yeah. There's not many people in the conversation with
there's
him.
not even there's only even a few people that even deserve to be mentioned with him in
Mm.
my humble estimation. Nobody who's playing today
No.
deserves to be mentioned with him, even like remotely. With all
No,
due
not even
respect,
close. You're
not
talking
even
about Peyton
close.
and Jim Brown and people like that. Like that's
Yeah,
those are the
the, those are the two guys. And
yeah.
after that, like Earl Campbell, Eric Dickerson, some of
Those
them.
are all a
OJ,
very different style though, right?
OJ,
Like yeah.
OJ.
Yeah.
All jokes aside, raising
No,
that
OJ was a
conversation.
great football player, which is
Yeah, great epic
what
football.
happened to his brain that caused a lot of the stuff. I mean, he got hit too many times. Is one of the many things. Yeah.
Definitely some plausibility to that, Andrew. When you're looking back on it now,
Yeah. Yeah.
when he played and what CT is and brain trauma and all those things is. But that's just to say Biggie's flow and delivery is like super velvety
Hmm.
and
Oh yeah.
still on here. It's like it's like Showtime Lakers Magic with the ball in his hand.
Smooth, so smooth. Yeah.
Smooth, it's easy, it's natural. This is what
Hmm.
he's supposed to be doing. And so this is what I mean about how special this record is. It's like, well, this is a big single. And
Hmm.
so somebody that's being lyrical, being funny, they're flowing, their delivery is flawless. That's what I mean. There's so many technical things about it. And then you get into the writing aspect of it with the satire
Hmm.
and tongue in cheek and all the gesture, all the, I guess, what I would say, metaphorical gestures
Hmm.
that are being and innuendos that are being presented in the way that they're being presented. It's
Yeah.
like, how do you hear this and it not make you smile?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Like and there are misogynistic points, obviously, in this,
but
but like
he makes it
it's
like he knows he's being misogynistic. That's part of what I mean.
yeah, he's winking at it and not just he's not
Yeah,
doing it cruelly, I guess. He's doing it because he's just talking
like, oh,
shit.
okay, so in Django, the use of the word, the N word.
Hmm.
Do you think that Quentin Tarantino is uh being abusive, or do you think there's some tongue in cheek in play?
Yeah, there's some tongue in cheek in there too.
Right.
Like,
Same thing going on with this record. You know what I'm saying?
mm.
So, like, for
He's
somebody,
and they're also illustrating the way people talked, like in the same way that Biggie's doing, right?
right?
He's just
And this is
making a this is an example of how people talk in this
and this is
context.
and this is some Brooklyn b-boy fly talk.
Exactly.
That's who he is. He's the flyest dude in Brooklyn. Like,
So he's supposed to talk like this.
yes, that's how he's supposed to talk. Yes, absolutely that. So where do you want to go from there? Like note wise, what are your notes? Like, kind of like, how do they unfold for this
Um,
record?
the hook is Jackson 5, right? Like, isn't that the One More Chance song? Yeah. Like, it's a fun inversion too
It's fun.
because he's taking young Mike too. So that's the Puff thing, or is that a thing that he
That's a
did before too?
no, that's a puff thing, man.
That's what I
Yeah.
figured. It sounds like a thing that Puff would do.
This is
Um,
this is
and
this this is how about this? For everything that Puff ever did, this was the formula that he was always trying to recreate that he could never quite
Hmm.
recreate. This record, the whole sampling thing, this is the record that made it like took it over the top.
Yeah.
This is the man.
Yeah.
This is the
It's the same thing he did with probably the greatest selling of the records, which is the one where he took the Every Breath You Take. Um, I'll be
the
watching
sting.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
the Sting song or the
yeah.
Police song. Yeah. I mean, it's the same general formula, right? I mean, it's taking one of
Right.
the
So
most instantly recognizable songs of the time and doing something completely different with it.
so this is what I mean about that's the formula. Well, where do you think he got that from? One More Chance is 95. I'll be missing you is 97.
Right.
He's pulled,
That's what I'm
that's what
saying. I'm just saying that was another example
Yeah.
of
No, no,
Biggie.
no. So this is what I'm saying is that all the other records after it where you're seeing the sample get
Mm-hmm.
used and why it's getting used the way it's used and it being
Mm-hmm.
popular, this is the record that kind of stamped that it was popular. Like on another level, like
Okay.
Juicy is big, Big Papa is big. Both of those are
Mm-hmm.
samples.
Yeah.
This was atmosphere. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like in terms of like how it tracked, how it trended, and even how it sounded. Because as much as I love Juicy and Big Papa, they are not better records than One More Chance to me.
This is
I
so
just don't.
good.
I just don't have any. I don't have any evidence that the beats aren't better. The sample's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily better. The lyric and the delivery is definitely not better. He's a totally different MC
Mm-hmm.
than you. Like he went from being a very great rapper to being one of the greatest rappers ever in about a year,
Wow.
if even that long. It's like from the moment like and he flashes on Ready to Die,
Mm-hmm.
like One More Chance. It's like, well, no, no, no. You can hear the guy that's talented on the original One More
Mm-hmm.
Chance, but you don't think that he can make One More Chance the remix when you're listening to Ready to Die, even though he's
This one.
making Juicy and Big Pop. Like you don't
Yeah.
see it. No, 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 not on the level that he's just executing like flawlessly. I would equate it to Ghostface has this line on the older guys where he talks about Dorothy Hamill, like the way we're like Dorothy Hamill on ice. We might circle. The way he circles on this record is like, oh no, you couldn't see that happening if you listen to Ready to Die.
Mm-hmm.
Like not a year later, because keep in mind this is helping to still promote Ready to Die. This isn't on any
Right.
album. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this is very Beatles like too, in the sense that it's kind of like a single.
Mm-hmm.
Really,
Yeah.
the remix really doesn't belong to an album.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And most remixes I made this note too. And most remixes I know of just change the beat a little bit. I mean, they're changing a little bit. So this is a whole fucking new song. Like the hook is similar-ish. I mean, like they're still sampling
So,
kind of ish, but like,
so
but like all the verses are completely different.
yes, yes, yes. Um, so there's even levels to this sampling shit. Is the
Hmm.
best way that I put it to
Please,
you.
please help
And,
me understand.
well, the best samplers are the people who did what got done. I need to pull up. I think maybe D Dot and Puff did this record. Um, like for me, and I know we talked some Mobb Deep,
Hmm.
having great sampling because you'll know where the sample's coming from, but the way that he'll freak the sample or the part that he'll pull the sample from. So is
Hmm.
Kanye. That's one of Kanye's gifts
Yeah.
too. His ability to pull that right part of the sample and loop it at the right point. Like Otis. You know what Otis? You
Hmm.
know the song record that it comes from? I mean, that's an example of great sample. You feel
Yeah.
me? Because
Yeah.
we all know that song, Try a Little Tenderness.
Hmm.
Like we
I
all know
love
that
that song. I love Otis Redding. He's
right.
one of my
But
very favorites.
song, but listen to how he's freaking. Yeah, please don't tease. He's stretching it. He's
Yeah.
pulling it, looping it. It's how you freak it. It's one of those style things. It's like, well, every point guard in the NBA can dribble the ball well, but then there's the way Steph Curry and Kyrie handle the ball.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So I would very much, from a production standpoint, it's like a point guard who has the illest handles.
Hmm.
You
Okay.
know, like so. Let me see who did this. They Kyrie with the handles on the sample. You feel what I mean? It's
Right.
like no, no, no. Best of the best in terms of how they freaking it.
It's both
You
because
know,
it's because you have to have both pieces, right? You have to be able to have like the technical ability to do it, like the
right?
actual handles, but you also
The,
have to know like
the
where
ear
you're
for
going and have a vision for what's happening to
yes.
it.
I think before even the vision, I think you have to have the ear for it. Like producers are listening to literally vinyl records. You know what I'm saying? It's still
Hmm.
around these times, 95. So they're still listening to like old school vinyl records. mama and auntie and
Hmm.
uncle and papa
Right.
vinyl records and like literally listening to these records and figuring, what I'm saying,
Hmm.
where am I gonna and it hits you. It's just like the inspiration when you write a
Yeah.
song and you know what it's like when it's sitting
Yeah.
there and
It just
it's
like drops on you. You're like,
it's a
oh.
the producer when they hear it, they're like, hold on, stop that, play that back, hold on, run that back, and they'll get over there on the vinyl and start, hold on, let me scratch, hold on.
Hmm.
That's how hip hop started. Was taking beats and break loops from disco records and chopping
Hmm.
them up and making them funky, giving
Yeah.
the artist, the master of ceremonies, time to jump in and say, look, that was the whole point of it. And so that's what I mean. It's the person with the
Mhm.
illest handles. It very much goes back to the core of hip hop to a degree because hip hop's based on, quite frankly, Clyde Stubblefield's, drum patterns and
Right.
kicks and loops from,
Yeah.
James Brown. That's pretty much what hip hop is based on, you
Yeah.
know? So,
I want to
the
interrupt you for a second. I want to tell you a fun sidebar story. I should
yeah,
save this for a different episode, but um the I forget what it wasn't Clyde Stubblefield, but it was one of the disco bands. Dave Grohl has said in interviews, the drummer for Nirvana and now the lead singer for the Foo Fighters, um, said he stole the like the disco flam beat, the like the four on the floor beat. You see that in a lot of early Nirvana songs. And he recounts the story of telling one of these guys, I wish I remembered which one it was, telling him like, just when he met him, like, thank you. Like this, I've taken so much from, not in a respectful way, but like I have used a lot of that. And the guy just told him, yeah, I know. But yeah, it's that. So that kind of beat is the disco flam beat. You call it the four on the floor is like the base for a lot of popular music, not just hip hop and disco. But that style has been taken in lots of other different directions too.
And
Mhm.
Dave, that's good backstory stuff. I mean, I think that I'm a Nirvana fan and a
Yeah.
Foo Fighters by way of Nirvana, just kind
Hmm.
of like following. What I mean? Because I literally didn't listen to the Foo Fighters until I found out that like Dave Grohl was like the
Hmm.
lead singer. I
Yeah.
was like, oh shit, like that's the dude from Nirvana. That's
Yeah.
like the drummer's a front man. I was like, that's so dope.
Yeah.
You know,
He made the whole first record. Well, this is not the point of this episode at all, but he made that whole first record by himself. The one with like the gun thing on the front of it. That's all him. He's playing all the instruments on it.
really?
Mm. Yeah. Made that
It's crazy.
not in his basement or his garage or something like that. Yeah.
Well, there is truly kind of like no idea is original. We're kind of all pulling from something,
Yeah.
from something else. There's we're our own sources of inspiration musically,
Hmm.
and so I think hip hop is just literally the only one that's rooted in literally taking somebody else's actual record, like the
Hmm.
story that you're telling. Like, how about this? Like that story is kind of like, and don't take this the wrong way, it's kind of mundane to me because it's kind of like, well, that's hip hop.
Yeah. That's what I mean. I was just giving you another example of it.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's like I mean mundane in the sense that it's like, oh, well, I've heard that so many times.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That it's kind of like, oh no, I totally understand that, and it totally fits. We do this shit regularly. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like even me as an artist, I would think about like my favorite artists and beats that I would want to hear them rap over, like
Hmm.
samples. And ooh, what if we had these arguments all the time, like about, oh, what if such and such were to rap over the such and such beat? You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Hmm.
Like, how would they sound on
Right.
that? That's just kind of part of our culture. That's the mixtape game too. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Taking this beat over here and these rhymes over here, doing a nice little blend. Like one of my favorite blends is you know, and this kind of goes back and coincides with the same time frame, is
Hmm.
Prodigy's verse to Shook Ones 2 over the Wu-Tang Clan Ain't Nothing to Fuck With beat
Oh,
on
whoa.
Funk Flex. Yeah. And it comes in, it's like, and it's got the little mixes, and it's like Prodigy's just voice is just there,
Mm.
and the beat's not playing yet. So you're hearing, I got you stuck off the realness. We be the infamous. You heard of us, official Queensbridge, and then the Wu Tang Clan Ain't Nothing to Fuck With beat starts coming in,
Mm.
like, and it just kind of builds up this momentum, and you're like, it's one of those things that you, even while you love hip hop, like they even like, it's like, no, 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 that beat wasn't even 2 years old when it got stolen. They put Prodigy's vocals over it.
Hmm.
It's part of what makes this shit so fun and innovative
Yeah.
is the take it and mix it and mission and match it and put it together. So I would equate it to the ball handler in the
Yeah.
NBA. Yeah. It's like, ooh, it's like Tim Hardaway with the Killer crossover. It's like, oh, did you see what he did with that sample?
Hmm.
Like, I know you've been watching According to Hip Hop show, obviously, when I've been
Yeah.
talking about the legit sample from King's Disease 3.
Hmm.
And I've been like, oh, that was right in front of our face. I know you may not be familiar with the movie The Five Heartbeats and Eddie Kane, but
Like I
it's
know
so
the name, but I don't know much about it past
right,
that.
it's so infamous in Black culture. That
Hmm.
movie and that scene, I was like, oh no, I was like, that sample was right in front of all of us and we missed it. You
Hmm.
know, it's a stroke of genius. It really is. And we think in those terms in hip hop about something like that. It's like, ooh, that sample was right there. And nobody took it and freaked it yet. And then Hit Boy did it. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And now it's a thing. That's part of the
Yeah.
culture. And so that's what I mean. This record, One More Chance is a flawless victory because even the sampling is flawless.
Yeah.
Like everything flawless about the record. The vocals are flawless. Everything. It's a perfect record. It's one of it you know, I think Dear Mama is a better record, but it's not as, it wouldn't check as many boxes as One More Chance, even though I think it's the better song. That's what I mean. Pac's content can just overwhelm even the greatest of records. And that's why I
Hmm.
would think Tell You Dear Mama is the better record. But there aren't too many hip hop songs ever been made that like check all the boxes at One More Chance.
Right. Okay.
Checks. It's like literally like it's like running the decathlon and you come in first place in all the events.
That's nuts. Yeah. It doesn't happen. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't
Winning the
happen. It's not
decathlon usually is like what LeBron does, is coming in second or third in all of the
right. You usually have
things.
to come in second, third, fourth, and everything. You might win gold in one or two of the events,
Yeah.
put yourself up. But yeah, so One More Chance is him like, running the gamut. It's like, what do you want? You want a hit record? I got you. You want to hear me rhyme over a dope beat, dope sample? Got you. Got the hook down? We
Hmm.
got you. Rhyme pattern? Got you. You gonna be entertained? I got you. Like, what do you want out of a rap song?
Hmm. All of
He's
it. And he's got all of it. Yeah.
got all of it on this record. So back to your notes.
Um, there's a few different ways I can go with this. Um, was he married to Faith Evans at like this time when he released this, or is that later?
Correct. Correct. No, no, no. They they were married at this time. Would be separating shortly thereafter, if memory serves.
Okay.
They're
It
into
was one of the notes was that it was interesting that she's doing the hook on this on a song with this thematic content too,
okay. So
which is essentially what I mean. This is a cleaner version than the original one, but still both of the thematic contents are like I've got a line of women waiting to get with me, essentially, right? I mean, that's the
so so a couple things. This is something you'll probably enjoy. A little backstory.
mhm.
Faith was a backup singer for Mary J. Blige.
That makes sense. That tracks. Yeah.
So that's part of the connection of how when Puff was starting his own label,
Mm,
he obviously couldn't have Mary. He wanted his own R&B songstress for Bad
mm.
Boy. That was Faith. So people have to understand when Faith and Big are meeting, Faith is actually the one with more notoriety and money.
Okay.
Okay, she's been on tour with Mary from what's the 411.
Right.
Yeah,
Which is a huge, huge deal. Yeah.
right. So she's already kind of like in the game as a
Mm,
songwriter and
right.
up and vocalist.
Hmm.
That, but her album, but Ready to Die comes out before Faith's album. And so this is one of those things where it's like everybody knew that they were a thing and they were
Hmm.
together. But you really didn't see them like in public. She signed a Bad Boy, he signed a Bad Boy. But if you'll notice in the third verse, when he's talking what he's talking, but she's laying in the bed.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So kind of signifying some things and also understand this is also a label mate,
Right.
mixing business and pleasure as well. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So it's a wise idea financially to put Faith on the hook, but also
Yeah.
that's his wife. That's kind of like it's kind of like Offset and Cardi, like keep the money in the family.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It's I don't know why would you go have somebody else sing it
Get double the
anyway?
money, man. Yeah.
It's about to be Big's biggest record too. It's about to
Hmm.
be. He's about. If I'm not mistaken, I don't know if I used to love me. You used to love me was out yet. I'm not quite sure when that record came out, but I feel like that record shortly followed after this
Hmm.
as well. Like I feel like One More Chance, the remix was that summer of '95, and I feel like Used to Love Me was like early fall.
Okay.
So this was prep Faith for her album run too, if I'm not mistaken. So that's what I mean. Well, there's some business and pleasure going on this flawless record too. It has some of everything, including
Yeah.
good backstory.
Yeah,
It's
that's
also dopest rap videos ever.
mm, yeah.
It is. Everybody's in this video. A lot of people who aren't here now are in this video. Aaliyah's in the video. A group R. Kelly used to manage and put on, Changing Faces, is in the video.
Hmm.
Heavy D, God rest his soul, too, is in the video. Of course, Puff is in the video. Total's in the video. I'm trying to think. Remember the model Tyson Beckford?
Yeah.
He's in the video. I want to say Busted might be in the video. Like
Mm.
literally
Who's
stars.
who of
The
yeah.
Brat and Jermaine Dupri are in the video.
Wow.
Mary's in the video.
Mm.
Mary looks stunning in the video, looking like a Word is original in a red dress. It's beautiful. Anyway,
Little memory trip down memory lane there.
yeah. Mary.
Mary's something else, man. Like
So yeah, but it was a star-studded video. I'm sorry, I just saw a picture of Mary with Fat Joe's wife, Lala,
mm.
from New Year's Eve the other night. Mary's just like, call me Mary. That's all I gotta say. I'm sorry.
Mary's yeah. She's a special one. She's a special one
That
for sure.
song, Ring My Bell. You can ring my bell. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
um, I'm
So
interested. I'm interested in this too. This is part of backstory too, I guess. Was all of the I mean, this the theme of the song is like I said, that there's a line of women waiting to get with Big. I mean, that's like, or he's saying that anyway. That's just part.
yeah.
Was that like a true statement, or like were there really, or is that
Okay.
just partly like an amplified hip hop
No.
persona thing?
No. Big's really a playboy. Big is really probably the most charismatic guy to ever touch the microphone. And
Mm,
based on the things that you hear, that translates back to real life. Like, while all
mm,
this is going on, Lil Kim is around too, Andrew, and they had a
mm,
relationship as well. So the whole player archetype and motif that he is perpetuating
hmm.
is very much true to form in
Okay,
real life, actually. So he's talking shit, but he's not.
he's
He's not
backing
just
it up too.
right. He's backing it up, right, for better or for worse, however you may.
Yeah, and it's not for me to judge that. That's yeah, that's a
So,
long time ago. Um,
so yeah, right.
the more that you've talked about this, the more you've seen me like lean down and like look at my lap. I've been like writing notes because I'm seeing a bunch of connections between the songs more than I had before. Um,
When I was walking my dog, I was actually thinking the same thing when I was playing the Led Zeppelin record.
that's a dirty freaking record. Like it's
When we talk about that record, I'm going to tell you something insightful, and I'm glad you brought up the sample side
mhm,
of this because our notes are about to connect flawlessly, like when we flip over. Because I
yeah.
love the fact that you brought up the sample for this record
Hmm.
because when we get to what my first notes are, you're going to be like, oh, it's going to make.
And the other connection that I thought of, just as you were saying, that was Led Zeppelin, Robert Plant particularly, the tall blonde lead singer, um, was
Very
also
much
had
in.
a line of women out the
Yes.
door coming
No, no,
after him too. Like
no. I
that's
was
another one of those connections, and then that was real life too,
no,
for
no.
him.
I heard the Robert Plant stories too. That's why I was kind
It's
of you about. Were you thinking? Well, that was going to be one of my questions for you. Is that were you thinking about Robert Plant's Playboy
mm,
persona and adulation by the women when?
yeah.
Because I'm not. I'm. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm more familiar with his appeal to the women than I am even with the group.
Hmm. The yeah, he's we'll talk about this more in a minute, but like he and it's not overstating it to say that all four members of Led Zeppelin could, if they're not the best musicians on their instruments or their vocals in rock history, they are certainly certainly some of the most influential and the most widely imitated. Like the
So,
entirety of most of the 70s and all of the hair metal bands of the 80s, they're all trying to be Robert Plant. Like all that's the person they're trying to imitate.
oh, that's okay. So he's the prototype, and this
Hmm.
band is the prototype.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Led Zeppelin. I mean, I'm mostly just
Mm.
familiar with Robert Plant, obviously, like I just stated before.
Um, all right. I think this is a good place to start. That they are one of in my head anyway, one of the like OG bands. Like we talk about the bands that everything that came after them is taken from them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you have Beatles, Stones, obviously. You have the Clash as the first punk band. I mean, they weren't really the first, but they also brought melody to it a little bit. Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Kraftwerk, which is the original like electronica kind of. They use the synthesizers and stuff. Um, but Zeppelin is one of those bands that pretty much every band um, in the white world that comes after 1970 or 75 um, has stolen something from one of those bands, is taken those six influences and mixed them in some way. And then obviously, like solo artists are also pulling from Dylan and Joni Mitchell and people like that, and they're also and hip hop artists are pulling from George Clinton and pulling from James Brown and pulling. I mean, they're pulling from lots of different places, but you can hear influences. I don't know of any band that has come along since like 1970 that's not some combination of those six bands, and Led Zeppelin is one of those. So and that it's electrified blues basically. It's taken the Robert Johnsons of the world, like the old blues singers, and running it through huge amplifiers is really essentially what it's doing. Like even the Lemon Song, which is comes from the Led Zeppelin 2, the second album they produced, which is one a whole lot of loves on, I'm pretty sure that is a Robert Johnson song, which is also an incredibly dirty song. Squeeze your lemon and let the juice run down my leg, like that kind of metaphor going on. Robert Plant and Mick Jagger are the two like types of lead singer, I guess, right? In rock and roll world. Um, I guess Lennon and McCartney are the other, but like they're playing the instruments and stuff like that. But Mick and Robert Plant are the two that are sing only singers essentially. They're not like playing instruments at the same time.
Right. Okay.
And um Mick is peacocking around the stage, strutting, whatever. Robert Plant is not completely standing still, but more standing still. And he's also I mean, he's wearing the tight pants and the whole deal. Like you follow that genealogy through, David Lee Roth and through even Eddie Vedder. And I mean, all of them are in that kind of Robert Plant genealogy, I guess. All four of the members of the band, though, you could argue the same thing for the Who, in fact, too. But are the like archetypal people in that like singer, guitarist, bassist, drummer, um, Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Paul Jones, and John Bonham. They're archetypal characters, I guess, in that thing,
In what,
and they're the ones that people who came after them copied in many
in what way?
ways. Um,
Yeah. They explain some of the ways that
okay,
they.
so Robert Plant we've talked about a little
Right.
bit already. He's at least at that time is the sex addict, and the one that all the girls are screaming about.
Mm-hmm.
He is like tall and blonde and wild haired and so forth, and there's a tight pants, tight shirt, like the sex symbol, I guess, and has a really high voice, singing and wailing almost.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jimmy Page he wasn't a heroin addict at this point, but was later in the 70s. Is pulling from the blues scale and the blues tradition primarily. He actually comes from a band previous to this called the Yardbirds. Have you heard of the Yardbirds?
It sounds vaguely familiar,
Okay. That
like
was a
very.
band that Jimmy Page was in with Jeff Beck, who's a other famous guitarist from, and a guy called Eric Clapton. You also might have heard of. Yeah,
Very.
clearly, that was a joke, but like, so that's like three of the great rock and roll guitarists all in the same band, in the mid late '60s, and it's a band called the Yardbirds.
Okay.
Um,
Most of this stuff flashes through my mind via my
mm,
time at Manifest, and
mhm,
so like it's like no, I can remember the Yardbirds albums being
mm,
there. You know, that's
yeah.
what I mean. I don't know. I can vaguely remember like stocking that band up. You know what I mean? But not really.
So Jimmy Page is the like the archetypal guitarist, long dark hair, like playing. I mean, he's think of like Slash from Guns N' Roses, or I mean, like all of them are coming from like the
They're coming.
Jimmy Page and Eddie Van Halen, and I mean, all of them are coming from that school. I mean,
Okay.
Van Halen sped up, obviously, but like it's um, they're all coming from that school of a lead guitarist as being like the secondary sex symbol from the band. Um,
Right.
John Paul Jones is the producer and the bass player. He's also the serious one. He's the one who kind of holds everything together in while everybody else is off. Not that he's not partying some too, but like he's the one holding it together in the midst of all of the chaos going around him. Um, and the beat, I mean, he's part of the rhythm section, right? So he's keeping the beat, like the groove going to like as part of the band. And he's played. I wish I'd looked it up, but he's like played on lots of other projects and produced lots of other things too outside of Led Zeppelin.
I have two thoughts. Two of my first notes. Um, you want to hear what they are, or I
Sure.
want to make sure that you kind of like giving me all the information that I need.
And we the drummer is a thing that we need to talk about too, but you can ask questions now. We can come back to John Bonham, he's a whole different animal, so to speak.
No, no, no. Let's okay. So right now we've covered how many band members now we
Therefore,
got? Okay, so we got Robert Plant,
hmm
and our lead singer, and he's our Mick Jagger.
hmm
And what time is in what era is Led Zeppelin?
Led Zeppelin is late 60s through 1980.
Okay, so they're coming on the heels
Hmm
of okay, and then there's Jimmy.
Jimmy Page, yeah.
Now Jimmy Page did a lot of dope solo stuff too, because his name sounds super familiar. He has his own solo catalog, correct?
He plays with other people too, yeah.
That's probably why. And then
John Paul Jones
John Paul Jones, and
is the
this
bass player, but he's
yes,
also
yeah.
he's a producer. He's also a producer on lots of other records, not just Zeppelin records.
And then we have a drummer.
John Bonham, yeah, who is
He sounds familiar too.
yeah,
John Paul, who doesn't sound familiar actually.
no, he is the most quiet of the group. Um, he is both in the band and in the wider world the more laid back, conscientious, not publicity seeking. I mean, none of them are now, but like at that point, where he was not the camera facing one, so to speak, right?
Right.
He's not the one that all the girls are screaming about. So, um, but John Bonham was, it's not much of an exaggeration that to say that like the Muppets animal, the Muppet that plays the drums
Yeah.
everywhere, is
And,
taken from him and Keith Moon, who's the Who's drummer. Um,
okay.
he was a wild motherfucker, man. Like he was a serious alcoholic. He died in this is what how the band ended. He died in October of 1980, which a little more than a month before John Lennon was shot, actually, um,
Of what?
from alcohol poisoning. He drank. I just looked it up. He drank like over 40 shots of vodka in one day, and which is like a bottle and a half essentially, and it was just and honestly, that's probably following a couple days of drinking too.
Probably consecutive.
But
So probably
yes, but yeah, he is alcohol poisoning. He died, and the band ended after that because they didn't want to play really without him. Um, he is one of the most iconic drummers that's ever been.
it is
He's
it is
it,
death first. Was he really that great of a drummer? I just have to ask respectfully because sometimes in hip hop terms,
mhm,
somebody might get edified or deified a little bit higher than maybe they actually were in reality.
mhm. No, he was that good. I mean, he's not like Neil Peart from Rush. He's not like that technically proficient.
Right.
And not in the same kind. He's not the same kind of drummer. Or who's the lady that drummed for Prince? I've lost her name.
Sheila E.
Yeah, her. Like she's not. He's not like that kind of drummer. Um,
Right.
but in that he's a drummer that everybody that came after him in a rock and roll sphere has taken from him. Absolutely. Um, the if you want to hear like iconic drum records that he was on, there's a song on this album, Led Zeppelin 2, called Moby Dick, that is almost a 7 or 8 minute drum solo essentially. I mean, it's like a
Mm.
it's pretty nuts. The most famous drum lick that he has is probably from Zep 4. It's a song called When the Levee Breaks. Um, and the drum to that is one of those drum licks that everybody has stolen from. They actually, it's got like an echo on it, because they were trying to figure out how to make it sound the way he heard it in his head. So he actually took the drum kit in the stairwell and they recorded it in a stairwell to have the echo in it.
Of the reverb.
Um, mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, he is that good.
Okay.
And he was looked at that way before he died too.
Right. He was who he was
Mhm.
before.
Yeah, I mean, I think having died probably does amplify his legacy some, but like it, he was that way before he died too. When they played,
Right.
the only one they haven't played together many more times. The three surviving members haven't played together many more times since he died.
Wow.
Um,
That's sad.
the the most recent that I know of anyway is when they were inducted to like the Kennedy Center honors, whatever, like where
Yeah,
they wear
no,
yeah. Um, and his son played John. I forget what his son's name is. John Bonham's son played drums with them. So
do you think that his passing and they're not performing and making albums past that time has hurt their legacy and kind of made a gap in a way for that heavy metal explosion that occurred in the 80s? Did that occur because of his death? Because when I look at all the bands that you're talking about, it's like, were those bands going to come out the wazoo if this band is still around with the
mm,
quality, with the quality of musicianship that you're speaking of from the
yeah,
individual members, and then the strength of them as a actual collective?
yes, some of them would have, but I don't know that you would have seen the rise of the bands like Cinderella and those kind of bands, the ones that are like the second tier. You still would have seen Van Halen and you still would have seen Guns N' Roses and things
Okay.
like that. But um, it is not, I don't think, overstating it to say that all of those bands, the Guns N' Roses and the Van Halens and Motley Crue and Def Leppard and all of those kind of bands
There's specific.
were trying to do Zeppelin. Yeah.
Okay. And just
Um,
not as good.
yeah, I mean, and they all have good songs. They do. I'm not like short selling them, but
Right. They're not
like
Zeppelin.
there was something almost like mystical spiritual about them. It was like a people I've never obviously seen them play live because they stopped playing before I was born, but lots of the people who saw them perform talk of it in like they went to a Pentecostal revival kind of. It's like that kind of spiritual thing. You can see some of it. They made a film called The Song Remains the Same. It's just essentially a live concert of them, and you can see some of that coming through the screen even then. But yeah, they were a very, very special.
Are you familiar with Erica Badu?
Oh yeah.
Is it that type of feeling that you're talking about?
I'm trying to think of a good comparison for it. I mean,
Right.
sort of, yes. I mean, and
Or is
this
it
is
how
no
Steve
disrespect. This is no
feel when
disrespect to Badu because I love me some Erykah Badu. Like she's one of my very
she's not?
favorites.
Yeah, she's not
Um,
in the canon.
I would say it would be like seeing Prince play. Is that kind of
Oh wow, it's like that, like that.
it's like that, yeah. Is that kind
Oh,
of
it's they're special, special is what you're saying.
yeah, they're at the very, very, very top of the musicianship thing. And lyrically speaking, as you see from the song, they're not this is not Dylan, Joni Mitchell, Paul Simon kind of lyrics. That's not what this is. But like the experience that you're having
Right.
when you watch them
But
together is a transcendent thing. The four of them together are like supersede anything that any one of them could do by themselves.
right. Sounds like the kind of the perfect coming together.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, they're blessed like to have the great individual musicians at their respective, and then they
Mhm.
have one of the best frontmen ever.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Certainly
Okay.
one of the most iconic and most widely imitated.
Right. Widely imitated, like even his like actions on stage.
Hmm. Yeah.
Correct.
If I know
So
you've seen like videos of like the hair metal bands in the 80s or whatever,
I'm very
go back and watch some of like early 70s Zeppelin playing. Like you can find videos and from The Song Remains the Same. Like all of them are copying Robert Plant.
no. It's all making sense now, and I've actually I briefly watched a brief bio on Led Zeppelin that had some of their
Mm.
performance footage,
Yeah.
even some of the early stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was already
It's a special group.
yeah, they're definitely a special group. So I'm going to tell you the first
Mm.
thing that I thought of when this record came on. Whole
Okay.
lot of I was like, I'm not sure if a rapper has sampled this yet, but they sure as fuck need to. That's the first thing that I thought when the beat came on. I was like, oh, we haven't taken this yet.
That 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 guitar riff is one of the most iconic guitar riffs in rock and roll history.
And I was actually thinking to myself, it's like, no, somebody had to have taken it, and I need to look it up and find it out because so that's why I was like, oh no, you're having the sample conversation with me on one more chance.
Mm.
It's like, no, I wanted to have the sample conversation with you about Whole Lot of Love. Like, why haven't we jacked this beat? This is what we do in hip hop. That
Mm.
shit comes on, and I'm like, oh, and this is my immediate thought. And keep in mind, I'm walking my dog.
Hmm.
I'm 41 years old.
Hmm.
I haven't recorded actively in over a decade, and I was like, I could rap to this shit. Is the
Oh yeah.
first thing that I myself when the beat came on.
That's John Bonham. That's the drum, right? Like I mean
And
and the guitar loops too,
and
right?
hip hop is based on,
The drums and the bass, which is those
and
two
you're
dudes,
talking,
right?
I'm asking you to break down the musicians because what I was hearing beat wise was like, oh no, this shit dope enough to rap to. Like on a
Hmm.
music level for me, like those drums, those are what we would like to call Jay Dilla or Q-Tip level drums, as in like the highest of the high.
Good.
Yeah.
I told you John Bonham was good. I mean, that's not
No,
why he was doing it, but yeah, you can use it for that for sure.
yeah. No.
And and the guitar loops too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the guitar is da 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 da
Yeah, and it's
da
catchy.
da da. Yeah. And it, I mean, I don't want to get too much into the blues pentatonic scale, but like they're all basically all of Zeppelin songs, especially the early ones on this album, are
Mm-hmm.
based on that like was that 7 note scale, um, and which is the basic blues scale, right? And like that riff is one of the first ones I learned how to play on the guitar. I'm not bringing the, I might play it over this too, just so everybody can hear it if they're not familiar with it. It obviously sounds different on an acoustic guitar, but it's got a forward momentum, I guess, that a lot of songs don't have. Like it pulls you forward.
It's it's very I don't even know because we're used to sawing something. What would you call like? It's very climatic. It's not anticlimactic. It's very like the record exists almost like at a peak consistently with
Mm-hmm.
no valleys. The valley that does exist is kind of orgasmic intentionally to
Oh yeah,
further the set
absolutely on
you end
purpose.
up. Correct,
Absolutely
correct.
100% on purpose. Yes.
And and here's what I know about some rap shit. Am I tripping or did they change the whole pattern of the drums when they picks back up? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not missing that. They changed the whole pattern style. Like because I'm walking my dog, and so part of me is like, hold on, did he just okay, so this is what I mean about how I can hear the high levelness of it. Oh, that's the shit RZA used to do in prime Wu-Tang days. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you had to catch the switch. It's like, no, did you hear how he just literally shifted the whole
Yeah.
thing? It's brilliant.
Yeah, and there's places where he play and the guitar part is da dun da dun dun da da dun da dun da dun. Like there's times he plays it with like three dun da da dun da da dun in between. There's times he plays it four, sometimes he plays it like at the very beginning he goes da dun da dun dun
See, I know, I know some I knew
right.
somebody had sampled it in rap. Ice T in 1987 sampled this record
Yeah.
on his album. Our Most Requested Record is the name of the song. I told you I
Mm.
was like, there's no way that somebody in rap
Yeah,
has this.
this is a really obvious one to take. Like
Like, no, it's right there, like right
yeah.
there for the taking. If you has an MC, has an
Hmm.
MC, this would be one of those records, and this is why I've always
Mm.
believed in listening to different stuff. it's like I would take this straight to my cousin M6 and be like, chop this shit up.
Hmm.
Let's.
Yeah.
It's like
And
we're
then this
worried.
one has lots of ways you could do it too. Like there's lots of different.
You could sample the front end of the record, the back end of the record, or you could just sample the ethereal middle part of the
Hmm.
record and do some creepy stuff. Like I could see some of the great producers sampling this record. I could see Havoc pulling from the middle orgasmic part. Those drums are right out of Q-Tip and Jay Dilla's book. The beat switch is straight out of RZA's book.
Mm.
That's the top 5 producer list for some people.
Yep. Yep.
So it's like that. Just so when you're talking about the music level, the musicianship,
Hmm.
just that alone. And then
Hmm.
you got this guy who's I guess he's I think this is where the pairing makes sense. He's very charismatic, just like Biggie is now, isn't he? And you can
Top
hear
level. He's on the Mick Jagger kind of.
right, and you
Yeah,
can feel that all over this record too. It's like, oh no, this motherfucker's a star,
he is.
big star.
Hmm.
You feel that he gives you that feeling. He
Hmm.
has that kind of command.
Yeah. You could you can hear it through the record without ever seeing him. You
Correct.
can also watch him perform without hearing, like if it was muted, you could watch him perform and still feel it too. Like
Mm-hmm.
it exudes from him. It does. Um
Mm-hmm. Some
and
people
not for those of you who haven't heard the song before, you need to go listen to it. But like Coop is not overstating the orgasmic part in the middle. He's going like in the middle of the song. Like this
no,
is not
but when you listen,
it's very explicitly that. It's not pretend.
but the musicality is very intentional
Yeah.
too. That's what
Hmm.
makes the record
And the
special.
drums going under it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's literally building up like intercourse is occurring on
Hmm.
wax. And so he climaxes
Yep.
and comes down and then comes back
And then
for
goes
seconds.
again. Yep.
Right. He comes back for seconds. Right. No, I
And then
totally
he starts singing "Shake for Me, Girl. I Want to Be Your Backdoor Man." I mean, this is pretty
yeah.
straightforward. Yes.
So yeah, my thoughts about the record were kind of like all wrapped into the
Mm.
appeal of the front man, much like Biggie. I think, I don't know if he's the most charismatic. I don't know if Robert Plant's the most charismatic person in the genre, but I think he's probably up there. The same way if Biggie's not the most, he's up there. Method Man,
Yeah.
Tupac, Day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's in the atmosphere with Mick Jagger and Freddie Mercury.
he's in that
Yeah.
special hall of the Hall of Fame
Yeah.
for front. Right.
Yeah.
Same thing with Big. Big is in a special Hall of Fame for class of MCs. Whereas you all have the great musicians in the band,
Mm.
we have the great producer and
Right.
great producer to pull the sample from the great musicians
Yeah.
and have our great artists flip it into something. Like I just heard the flip of this record. That's what I loved about it. It's like
Hmm.
I was really thinking to myself too. It's like, how Puff not take this? Like, because I knew we were going to talk about it. I was like, how did Puff not take this? I know Puff knows this record. He has to. It's a
Obviously, yes.
it's the
It's one of the
police.
most famous rock and roll records ever to be
Yeah,
made.
yeah. He's got to know it. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. I hope this show becomes big enough that there's a rapper out there that sees this
Hmm.
and
Yes.
needs to be
Get on
done.
that.
And Led
Yeah,
Zeppelin
and they
gets
have a
paid.
lot of songs that you could do this with too. Um, like Heartbreaker, which a lot of the early ones, especially Heartbreaker is another one that has based on the like musical scale that does this. Moby Dick is taking the beat from When the Levee Breaks. Um,
Mhm.
is another one. I mean, we've gotten I don't even know how many minutes into this episode, 45 probably, without me saying the word Stairway to Heaven once, which is like a whole different level of iconic. We'll have to do a whole different episode about Stairway to Heaven. But
We're going to find
that's a
the
whole
appropriate
different thing.
song to pair with. Do we have a pairing for that? What do we
No,
pair?
like, and that's the thing. That's one of the reasons I haven't done it because it's a
No, I'm familiar with the.
lyrically and whatever. It's really a weird song, so it needs a pairing that has multiple acts to it. Not like a Kanye song necessarily, but like one that's got like different pieces to it. Um, and we can talk about that off camera too.
What do you
But
think?
it's
Michael and Quincy record from King's Disease 3.
I'll have to go back and listen to it, but maybe yeah.
Well, I mean, just there's about 3 or 4 different beat switches and instrumentation that's going
I'll have to
on.
go back and listen, but
Yeah.
that would be cool though. I mean, I would love to talk about Michael and Quincy just generally. Like that would be
Yeah, just the
It'd be
fact
fun.
that they had a song named Mike and Quincy, I thought was dope.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but I mean, that was those were most of my notes. My notes were just all around the instrumentation and the sampling, the
Hmm.
star, the this is. I mean, this is. I mean, this really is like Biggie's talking about sex on record.
Hmm.
Is sex on record
Yeah. Hmm.
like kind of like in that metaphysical
Hmm.
sense that where the vibe transcends, so to
Hmm.
speak. And it's like words don't necessarily need to be used to communicate because the instrumentation is as
Hmm.
such. The
Yep.
artist vocally is performing as such that it's letting you know everything that's going on without even actually forming any
Hmm.
actual discernible words.
Yep.
And that's what we would call musical genius.
Yep. And that's why I put them together, or one of the reasons I put them together, because they both are about sex, obviously, but they are about sex in a perhaps a little less direct way than you were talking about in the last episode about lots of R&B singers being like
Yes,
more
this,
direct and more like not subtle about it a while.
but they're being their charismatic and inviting selves, and women
Yeah.
both love them for that.
Yeah.
So they were doing
And
what they did well.
yeah, you don't listen to these songs and you're not like, like
Right.
sometimes you listen to those other songs, you're like, ugh, that's not very like
Like how can
enticing, right?
it's like
Like it's
how can you not like these guys almost? It's like Big's on
mm,
the record, he's like black and ugly as ever. However, I stay cool down to the socks. You know?
exactly. Yeah.
You don't that guy? It's like that's him talking to the girl, making her laugh. It's like, oh no.
Hmm.
And it's the same thing Robert Plant's kind of doing on the other side. You
Yeah.
know, just in his way with his swag for what works for him.
Hmm.
You know,
I mean, he's still saying way, way down inside, I want to give you every inch of my love. Like it's this is not,
very,
but
very
but yeah, he's that's game too, right?
right. I mean, you know, the smartest men say the things that the women are thinking to the women.
Hmm.
So you know, if she's feeling that way, go with it. And in Robert Plant's case, I think most of the women felt that way
Hmm. Yeah,
actually,
he did as we coming back
and he
around to
went
big,
with it.
like he had a line too. Yeah.
Huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
and he went with it. I think we all know that.
Yeah, he
So,
did. He definitely chilled out a whole lot more in his old age, but
did he ever
like
get married? Is he married?
I don't know that he is. I can look it up. His most recent stuff actually, he has. You know who Alison Krauss is? Do you know that
Yep.
name?
Yeah.
She's a bluegrass
Yes, I
um
know. I
artist.
know her.
She and he have made two or three different records together, I think, that are bluegrass-ish and much quieter. Um, and they're very, very, very good too. But they're very different than the electrified blues of Led Zeppelin. They weren't the first prog rock band like Rush and Yes and Jethro Tull and those kind of bands that played the
Hmm.
20-minute songs, but they did have songs that were longer in their later albums, like in the mid late 70s, like songs like Achilles' Last Stand. Um, do you know the the guitar riff and the drum beat to like Heart Song Barracuda? Look.
If I did, I probably if I heard it, you know, just
Okay.
being honest.
I wish I could play them on here for you, but um, the Hearts song Barracuda is taken from Achilles' Last Stand. This is a Zeppelin song, that riff too. Um, you know, I mean, everybody, you might not know the name Immigrant Song from Led Zeppelin. You know and I can't sing it now because my voice is gone, but the you look up Immigrant Song too. Y'all look up Immigrant Song too. If you have not, you it's one of those things that you'll recognize immediately when it starts playing too.
Just
Um,
gonna load Led Zeppelin up. I'm familiar with Stairway to Heaven, definitely.
yeah, he was married from 1968 to 1983.
Okay. Oh, so he's really a piece of work then.
Yeah, so a lot of those things were happening.
While he was
She
alive.
was married. She was married to him through the Led Zeppelin when Led Zeppelin was together. The last thing I know we're about to cut off too, but I did want to point this out too because you've talked a lot on According to Hip Hop about how lots of artists are not evaluated fairly in the popular media,
Mhm.
especially people like Nas. who are not evaluated fairly in Rolling Stone and The Source and et cetera, et cetera. Led Zeppelin actually, when they originally released these albums, was also kind of panned by Rolling Stone too. They were not rated very highly. Led Zeppelin actually is probably one of the reasons that Stone started going back and re-reviewing some of the ones, because they gave a lot of the first four Zeppelin records really bad ratings. They're another one of those bands that were not respected in their day by music critics in the same kind of way they probably should have been
Mm.
as well. So
So
I
they
don't want to point that out too. That's another comparison point.
more of the people's champ.
Mhm. And
How were they big selling? Because I mean, their name is legendary. Were they a big selling band though? Okay.
yeah, I mean
They
the I didn't look up how many records this is from Led Zeppelin too. Their first four albums were named one, two, three, and four. Like they were just named
So they're coming
that.
around 60s. So they're so them, Queen, The
Queen's a
Who,
little bit later, but yeah.
Queen's later. The Who was around, right?
The Who was around. Their contemporary, yeah.
Rolling Stone and Beatles still contemporaries?
I would think. I mean, the Stones
Or
were all the way through the '70s too,
oh
um,
yes. The
but
Beatles.
I think of Beatles and Stones being a little bit before, and the Who and Zeppelin being
Right. There's like the Beatles
contemporaries.
and the Stones are still around, but it's kind of
Right.
like at its tail a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the Beatles
Right.
stopped in 1970, right? So
It is at the tail. And I mean, when is the Stones last time? Didn't the Stones still like make music through the 70s? Oh, like
the
actual
Stones still make music now. Yeah.
like new music?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Here, let me look up when their last album was. I mean, it's been fairly recently, I think. And individual, like McCartney's released an album in the last couple of years too. Their most recent album was in 2016, The Stones. So yeah, they're still playing. I mean, they're not looked at. I mean, they're still decent songs, but they're also not looked at in the same way as Let It Bleed or
Yeah.
Sticky Fingers or, I mean, those kind of those records from the
All right.
early '70s usually.
Yeah.
We will have to do another episode about the Who too, because they are many of the things that I said about their four members being like the iconic ones that people copy all the time could also have been said about the Who too.
Okay.
They have I think less of a discography. Um,
Who's
but
who's lead singer?
Roger Daltrey is his name. Um,
Okay.
and their
No,
names aren't as famous.
yeah, I'm
Roger
not a
Daltrey, Pete Townsend would be the one who's the name you would know. He's a
I
guitarist.
know who it is. Yep.
He's the one that did like the windmill guitar. I can't do it in the closet because I hit my hand in the wall, but like play the guitar with his arms swinging around. Um,
So one of my coworkers was trying to put me onto this band called the Kinks.
mhm.
You familiar with the Kinks?
Yeah, Kinks are
Are they
good,
good?
man. Yeah,
Kinks are good. I
yeah,
played a couple records. They were pretty good. We might need to do some Kinks stuff too.
I'm good with that. The song that Van Halen made most famous, "The Girl You Really Got Me Now, You Got
Hmm.
Me So," that's a Kinks song. Um,
That
I'm
is
pretty
right.
sure. I may be miss saying that. I'm pretty sure that's a King song. They have
Yeah,
a bunch,
a lot of
and that's
pop
that's Ray Davies. They're brothers. Yeah, with like they're two brothers in the band. Yeah.
in the Kinks.
hmm
Okay.
I'm I'm gonna have to go check all those details before I edit this episode to make sure I'm telling you correctly. But I'm pretty sure that's right.
Okay.
I did not do my Kinks research before for that. Um,
Just hit you with the Kinks. My bad.
no, it's good, man. Like if you haven't listened to Lola, the song Lola, you would dig that too. It's pretty cool. Um,
Yeah.
so.
I'm gonna dig off into it. Like I've told you I've started kind of walking my dog Woody again a little bit more. He's trying to lose some
Mm.
weight. And I was thinking like I've been like on these rock and roll kicks while I've been actually walking the last couple of days. I think that's going to be kind of like my space to kind of like do some of that and get into
Yeah,
some of the some get some like Zeppelin and some Queen,
that's good
Who.
walking music.
It is good walking music. It is. I actually enjoyed the walk today. So
Mm.
I just had a whole lot of love on repeat.
Yeah, whole lot of
Yeah,
love will get you moving for sure. That's
yeah.
it's a moving record. And like that whole album is. The Led Zeppelin 2 is.
This is two.
Three is more acoustic, is quieter. Though it does have the immigrant song. Led Zeppelin 4 is the one with Stairway to Heaven and When the Levee Breaks and Black
Mhm.
Dog. The Black Dog is a Hey Hey Mama Said, the way you move, gonna make you sweat, gonna make you
Yeah.
groove. Obviously can't sing because my voice is gone, but like it's that song is on there. Um, that's the most famous one, probably the one's got the most songs that you would recognize on it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, more Zeppelin later. So this has been good.
Yeah.
We'll get back at it later on.